So, hello everyone, welcome. This is the November 7th meeting of the Outreach Committee. This was rescheduled to this day after we had to cancel quorum the last time. Or, excuse me, cancel the meeting the last time because we didn't have quorum. I'm going to be calling this meeting to order at 7:33 p.m. Before we begin, I'm going to start off with a territorial acknowledgement. Namely that we respectfully acknowledge that the SFSS is located on the traditional unceded territories of the Coast Salish people, including the Musqueam, Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, Coquitlam, and Katzie nations. Unceded means that these territories have never been handed over, sold, or given up by these nations, and we are currently situated on occupied territories. We'll now move on to the roll call of attendance, which starting off with communications counselor. So Alan, go ahead.
Hi everyone, my name is Alan Ripke, pronouns he, him, all my access needs are met.
Next up is mathematics counselor, which is me. Hi everyone, my name's Ben, pronouns he, him, and all my access needs are met. Next up is world languages and literature.
Hi, Raghava, he, him, all my access needs are met.
Next, ex officio is not here. VP finance is also not here. Next up is physics.
I'm Daniel, use any and all pronouns, and all my access needs are met.
All right. FCAT does not seem to be here either. RHA. RHA. Right, okay, I guess we'll move on. I think Emmanuel might be having some audio issues or something. So we have no society staff on the call today. We're now on to the consent agenda. The motion reads, be it resolved to adopt the consent agenda by unanimous consent. There is one item in the consent agenda, which is 4.1.1, which is receiving and filing the September 30th Outreach Committee meeting minutes. So I will seek unanimous consent on the consent agenda. If you wish to object to any items in the consent agenda, please use the Zoom raise hand feature and I'll record your vote. Seeing none, the consent agenda is carried unanimously. Next, we're on to the adoption of the agenda. The motion reads, be it resolved to adopt the agenda as presented. Can I get a mover?
Communication.
Communications will move. Is there a second?
Physics.
Physics will second, opening the floor for discussion if people want to make amendments to the agenda. I'm going to be extremely pedantic here today and move to amend the motion just because I noticed a little typo here to strike the colon at the after the word presented and replace it with a period. Just a little bit of a typo. Is there a second?
Communication.
Communications will second. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, I'll seek unanimous consent to basically amend the motion by striking the colon and replacing it with a period. If you want to dissent or abstain on the amendment, please use the Zoom raise hand feature and I'll record your vote. Seeing none, the amendment is carried unanimously. We're now back to the main motion. Just in the chat, Emmanuel, he, him, his, access needs are met. Thanks, Emmanuel. Back to the main motion on the adoption of the agenda. If anybody wants to make any amendments to the agenda tonight, now would be the time to do that, or we can just get on to our regularly scheduled business for today. Alan, you have a list.
I wanted to amend a new discussion item called 10.4. I'll post it in chat, titled Future of Outreach Committee.
Okay, just write this down. So Alan has moved to amend the agenda to include a new discussion item titled discussion item 10.4 titled Future of Outreach Committee. I'll second the amendment. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we'll proceed to a vote on the amendment. I will seek unanimous consent on the amendment. If you wish to dissent or abstain, please use the Zoom raise hand feature and I'll record your vote. Seeing none, the amendment is carried unanimously, and we're now back onto the main motion, which now reads, be it resolved to adopt the agenda as amended. Are there any further amendments? Seeing none, I will go to a vote on the amended motion now. I will seek unanimous consent to adopt the agenda as amended. If you wish to dissent or abstain, please use the Zoom raise hand feature and I'll record your vote. Seeing none, the adoption of the agenda is carried as amended. We are now on to discussion item 10.1, which is the next item in our agenda, titled Historical Work of the Outreach Working Group, which was submitted by me. I was hoping that Abby could maybe also be here, as he was also on the original Outreach Working Group and he could offer some further context as well. But yeah, I'm going to start off by listing myself here, just to talk a little bit about the historical work of the Outreach Working Group, so this was conceived, I want to say last summer, like summer 2021, to clarify, not 22, as a working group to try and foster better student outreach from the SFSS. This later turned into, it was basically specifically formed around the original idea of creating some like informative videos about the SFSS, which the working group had worked on and was later turned into what is now SO13, the Outreach Committee, which is what this is. If you guys look at your Google Drive, you should all have a shared drive that's now shared with you called Student Outreach Archive 2021-2022. If you're able to click on the videos doc, you'll be able to see like there's a pretty complete like structure of and some scripting for videos that's there. For about 10 or so videos, I want to say. There's also the link to the TOR, and also just in general some other ideas that were tossed around, and some recordings of various meetings that were had. If anyone has questions about this, happy to answer them, but the floor is open for discussion. Alan, you have the floor.
Was the main thing with the video that didn't end up getting made, was it just time-wise or just too busy, or was it just because it was really just a working group and didn't really have that drive to finish it?
I think a lot of the issue was sort of time-wise, I think a lot of the issue was time. Anybody else have anything they want to talk about on this? Daniel?
I'm just trying to look for the Google Drive, and I cannot find it. I'm not sure if anyone could just share like a link directly with me or anything like that.
Yeah, I can post a link in the chat. Hold on. Here, you need to access it with your council email, but you should have access to it. Anything else that anyone wants to add to this discussion item? Alan?
I think it'd be good if within the next 2 weeks, if everyone would be able to find the time just to like lightly skim through, and then we can revisit this as a discussion item, just talking about what worked, what didn't, what we can implement from here. So if everyone would be okay with that by 2 weeks' time.
Yeah, I think so. Sounds fine. And I see at least a thumbs up from Raghava as well. So I think we can look at doing that. Anything further anyone wants to add to this discussion item? No? Okay. That is item 10.1 concluded. We're now on to item 10.2. This was submitted by Alan Rupke, the communications counselor, titled Commuter School Complaint Legitimacy. The blurb is discussion on the reason for the lack of student engagement. Is the commuter school aspect the biggest reason? Alan, since you submitted this, take it away.
Sweet. Yeah, so the reason I added this was because of the constitution of our outreach committee. Our preamble is just SFU has frequently struggled with student engagement and has become known as a commuter school. Due to this, the SFSS also struggles to engage and inform the student body. This committee seeks to try and improve SFSS member outreach. So I wanted to gauge the rest of the committee, and it would be nice, of course, if we had a full committee here, but just how each really counselor felt about the commuter school legitimacy of that claim, and if that is the main reason why the SFSS does struggle with engagement. I'm sure there are a multitude of factors. I mean, just to go off, I do think that a big part of it is it's not just the commuter school thing. While that may be 50% of the blame, I do think just voting in general across universities and I mean nationally, and for us, like in our municipalities, it is lower. So should this committee's main goal be reflected around the commuter school complaint? And I just want to hear what everyone else thought of that in relation to how their clubs get people to come out. What is the main driver?
Emmanuel?
Okay, could everyone hear me now?
I can hear you fine.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I think you're right. I think there's I guess centering the problem as being a commuter school, that makes it almost like impossible to do anything about it. And yeah, I think the problem spans, again, you mentioned voting, that's a part of it as well. Being able to get that engagement with voting. I think a few months ago, I worked on a project with a group. We had presented a voting, we've studied like the voting patterns at SFU and specifically SFSS, and that's something that group is still willing to work again with the outreach committee and the SFSS with, in terms of, I guess, getting that engagement with voting. But in addition to voting, I think there's more things like events and getting some sort of student life on campus. I think any campus that's able to have some sort of life to it, and it's always tied to some sort of sense of community, and which is done like through like events and consistency with events, and not just like things that happen this year but doesn't go on to next year. So I guess consistency of things, of people to expect, okay, at this time of the year, this thing is going to be happening, and people are already looking forward to it. It could be talked about in advance and things like that. So again, I think, like you said, it spans beyond just being a commuter school, because if we frame that as the problem, then there isn't anything to be done about it. So yeah, it includes commuter school, voting, getting people engaged in that manner, and also getting some culture of events and sense of community and student life on campus. Yeah.
Anyone else have any additions any comments they want to make on this discussion item? Raghava, you have the floor.
Yeah, just I think adding to what Emmanuel said, I think, yeah, the commuter school is probably a part of it, but I mean, at least for myself, the time I've been at SFU, which has been far too long, I think in the past, like definitely like events and stuff and sense of community and what I would say sense of place have really been lacking at SFU. I think after COVID, a lot of stuff improved, but also the sub building opening. But like one thing, at least for me, that I really experienced when I first started at Simon Fraser was just like being on campus sucked. Like it just was not a nice place to be, and there wasn't really any like nice places to be with other students. And I since we came back after COVID, a lot of that has improved, and like the spaces are nicer, the sub is there, and there's a lot of like whenever I'm walking through the convocation, there's like all the fire pits and different like games and stuff happening, and all of that I think really contributes to creating a sense of community and a sense of place where people feel a sense of belonging, which is really important to anchor people to the campus and make them feel a desire to engage with the community on campus. So, I mean, as per the question, I think it's a bit of the commuter campus reality. Like if people have a long commute home, they might be unwilling to stay later. But also just, yeah, like feeling good being on campus, feeling like there's a sense of stuff happening and people there. So we could probably focus on both.
Daniel, you have the floor.
Yeah, I just had a small thing to add. That maybe the commuter school kind of idea is also a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy where people hear about it being a commuter school and sort of just accept that fact, like when they first start at SFU. Because I could definitely see that happening. Because I mean, to make friends, you do have to go out of your way, and if you feel like you can't go out of your way, then it makes a lot of sense that people, just would not go out of their way.
Yeah. Anyone else have any? Alan, go ahead.
Yeah, I think I'll just do a final list. Yeah, I do agree. And it is kind of, I like what you said, Daniel. It is kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy, and it's probably been for years now. Like, I do think that we should, instead of looking at the community school campus, because that is something we can't control, but like even Emmanuel said, in-person events, building that sense of community, giving people a reason to stay, I think that should be closer towards the goal of what we want out of outreach.
I would not disagree with you on that. Anyone else have any lists on this item? Seeing none, that is 10.2 concluded. We're now on to 10.3, social media outreach, traditional media outreach, what works. This was submitted by Alan as well. The blurb is best examples of outreach engagement we've seen at SFU, clubs, organizations, faculty, or at other universities. Alan, if you want to start us off.
Yeah. So I wanted to bring this up because, I mean, as outreach committee, it's good if we figure out what really should be our intended goal. I know, like, if you wanted to speak to what was the reason for deciding to pursue videos, if that would have been a great way of engaging the student body. But also, at least in my DSU, we focus a lot on Instagram as our main point of contact within our students. It's really Instagram, Instagram Reels. Twitter gets almost no engagement. Facebook is very little. So how do we balance that? We did think of the idea of having a monthly newsletter from our DSU. So I was wondering if that would be an interesting thing for outreach committee. And also what works for your guys' DSUs? How do you guys reach out to your students, whether it's just interpersonal or it's through social media?
I'll list myself and speak to this at the DSU level, since I also happen to be the president of MSU. And I don't think this is necessarily applicable at the SFSS level for a number of reasons, but at MSU, we're a bit old-fashioned. We've used email for quite a long time. We've shifted a bit more now towards a bit more social media focus with Instagram, but for a long time, email was our main form of that. Raghava?
Yeah, for World Lit, we use Instagram for like announcements, and Discord. We have a big Discord server for everyone who joins the department, and also we're pretty like union and like group of students, so we're pretty involved with the faculty, and they help to like knit a kind of community and like stuff like that, and push information that engages the students who are in world lit and languages.
Emmanuel?
Yeah, I think to echo what everyone have said, I think social media in for us specifically, like in the RHA, it's been Instagram. That's been that place for us where we could get that engagement. But we've also found that the best way to actually get engagement is also to create a ripple effect with one person telling their friends, and the word spreads faster with someone else telling you instead of it coming directly. Though of course we still do it on our part, we still do the postings and all of that, but we find when we're able to engage with people that come out and or come to speak to us, we're always curious to know how they found out. And for most people, it's usually, oh, my friend said I was coming, or my friend told me about this. And so we found that that also works. And yeah.
Daniel?
So like I think that's
Yeah, the PSA has been really similar to what Emmanuel is describing. It sort of passes through word of mouth that people get involved in it. It like I think that the emails aren't as effective as like we want them to be, or like any like Discord notifications, anything like that. It's really just sort of having a direct physical connection with like another human that kind of gets people more involved.
Alan?
Yeah, and I'm really asking this because I mean, it's tough for at least my experience with my DSU because communication has 3,000 students, and we are consistently one of the most dead student unions when it comes to turnout for events, at least the percentage to our like actual student body. So I always thought about for SFSS, how do we relate that ripple effect to SFSS? Because as far as I know, the only thing that gets people talking about the SFSS is controversy. And as members of the outreach committee, I guess that isn't really our goal here. So unless we're really talking about events and focusing on marketing for events, such as maybe, I don't know, emails that are bigger than that newsletter to help advertise all the SFSS events, I'm unsure of how to apply the ripple effect for an SFSS wide scale.
Manuel?
Yeah, I think for the SFSS, it would have to, the ripple effect would start like in a bigger way, if that makes sense. So it would have to start with the SFSS going to its DSUs and all of that, and then the DSUs then bringing that to their membership. So it has to start with a great relationship with the SFSS and the DSUs and all the independent student unions as well. I think that's where the ripple effect would start for a big institution like the SFSS, and from there it would go on to the DSUs, and from the DSUs to its members, then from its members to their friends, and things like that. I think that's the best way I see to get that ripple effect going in this way as well.
Alan, you have a direct response?
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I actually really like that. I think it'd be pretty cool if over the, I mean, I guess the next few months, if we could develop like an actual, like an actual drawn out ripple effect of the best way really in our minds and our experience across our DSUs. What is that best way to get that to the student body? So whether it starts at the SFS level, let's say an Instagram story, and the DSU reposts it, and a consistent schedule of whether how many days, what kind of captions, how do we set up the actual bio. I think that would be an interesting project for the outreach committee, just develop the best kind of tree for outreach to actually get spread to the student body. So I want to know what you guys thought about that.
I will just read out my comment from the chat as well, that we should be mindful to not, let's say, conflict with or take away the work of our staff. Anything else people want to say on this? Seeing nothing, I guess we're done with 10.3. On to the newly amended item 10.4, Future of Outreach Committee. This was also submitted by Alan. If you want to go ahead.
Yeah, so just this last one I amended last minute. I wanted to look over the Constitution again because the goal of the Constitution does not seem fitting for what Outreach Committee is, and I'm interested in how we can further just really build up Outreach Committee for the future, whether or not we can really get any formative work done this year. whether it's staff roles or anything else, I think it would be good to slowly shape up what outreach committee is for future years. So I want to know here, I can send the current purpose of the outreach committee. But also what our goals are. Because I mean, one of our purposes, 13.3, to ensure students are knowledgeable about business before the SFSS's governing bodies. Whether that is an actual production of, let's say, videos or articles or written work detailing how the SFSS works, how Robert's Rules works, what are motions, what should our role be going forward? Or should we look at creating an even bigger role where instead we are kind of the student liaison committee for outreach and engagement, whether it's survey work or otherwise? So I want to know what, I guess, the people who are passed on outreach, and also where do you see this could be being headed?
Sorry, Alan, I didn't catch the last part of what you said. Do you mind just repeating that?
Oh yeah, of course. It's just, where do you see, at least with the way the committee's set up now, where could we be headed in the future, and what could we do to further build this community for the next few years? Such as changing policy or adding a new purpose related to outreach.
I guess in terms of where I hope this committee heads, I hope that at some point we'll be able to figure out a way to get some of these videos produced somehow. I know, at least I think some of them would be kind of helpful, especially as we've now sort of, over the last few years, totally switched around how our governance model works from a, I believe, 16-member board to now a 50-odd member council. I think it would just be helpful for clarity to the membership in some sense as to what we are, what we offer, and how we govern ourselves, as I don't think that's the most clear necessarily at the moment. In terms of, I guess, other goals for the committee, in terms of policy changes, I'm not too sure. Alan?
Yeah, the idea of making a committee, at least an SFSS committee, purely centered around really production of videos or even small infomercials about stuff about the SFSS. And so that means people who nominate or join this committee really would be either interested or able to use software like that. I think that'd be an interesting committee to actually have for SFSS, and a great way for people to earn experience doing that as well. And I think stuff like this is probably important before we do start hiring like student at large reps. That way we can actually say, like, if you want more experience or have experience with video production, script writing, we'd love to have you work on this committee. So if this is something that, I mean, a lot of the other members here, if you guys are interested in doing, I'm all for it being more of a production-based outreach committee and furthering and finishing the videos that were kind of planned on last year.
I'll respond to that in some sense, just because I don't remember. I think all I would say is I think we need to be mindful to not take away work from our staff, just because that is something I see this committee potentially running into, depending on which direction this committee is headed in the future. Alan?
Yeah, that's fair. I think, yeah, once we do have an idea of, I guess, the plan with everyone and what the committee agrees, it should, yeah, it has to go to staff first to make sure what we're doing is actually okay and doable.
Anybody else have things they want to add to this item? Raghava?
Yeah, I mean, just responding to what Alan was saying, I think an expanded liaison role for the committee would be good in terms of like video production and stuff like that. Maybe not just limited to that, because there's probably other avenues we could also look at pursuing. But I think that's definitely a good direction to go in if it's in accordance with what the staff, knows about.
All right. Is there anything else folks want to add onto this item? Seeing none, we will proceed to the next item on our agenda, which is section 16 adjournment. 16.1 reads, be it resolved to adjourn the meeting at 8:03 p.m. I will move this motion. Can I get a second?
Communication.
Madam Chair.
I saw physics' screen light up first. I'll give it to physics. So physics seconds. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, proceed to a vote. I'll seek unanimous consent on the motion to adjourn. If you wish to abstain or dissent on adjourning, please use the Zoom raise hand feature and I'll record your vote. Seeing none, the motion to adjourn is carried unanimously and this meeting is adjourned.